Now, Cory Booker was on TV recently, and they were talking about impeachment, and then later Jared Kushner. Now, his thoughts on impeachment are not wild and crazy, but they are reserved. The Kushner stuff's a lot more interesting, but first, let me give you context here by showing you his answer on whether they should go towards Trump's impeachment.
I just want to tell you right now, I'm not going to rush to impeachment. I think we need to deal with this in a very sobered way. This can't be a relitigation of an election that is now passed. This has to be about an objective assessment about the facts that are going on right now. And all I know is I'm very satisfied that we have an independent investigation now going on through the Justice Department, as well as both houses seem to be moving not as fast as I'd like, but moving towards independent congressional investigations. We need to make sure that the United States of America is protected. Nobody disagrees with the fact that the Russians attacked us in terms of their cyber attacks, and we need to get to the bottom of what happened. And if there were Americans that colluded with the Russians to undermine our democratic processes, they should be held to account.
So look, I don't mind that point overall. I think that you should talk about impeachment if you have evidence that he in fact worked with the Russians. And that's how it works. You have to see if he actually broke a law. I think that there is now pretty good evidence that's actually in the public about obstruction of justice. I have read reporting that the Democrats are afraid to say impeachment because of what the Republicans will do. But let's give Booker the benefit of the doubt on that. So he's now, of course, the senator from New Jersey. And for the establishment Democrats, he's considered one of the leading candidates for 2020. Like, oh, here's a guy who takes a lot of donor money, works for the establishment, but it seems like a real progressive. Yeah, okay. So now, all right. So you want to say that on impeachment? But now, when we go to Kushner, we just found out that Trump's son-in-law is a person being investigated by the FBI for his connections to Russia. Now that's deeply concerning, but more importantly, he asked for a private line of communication with the Russians, with the Kremlin, and he asked that it be at the Russian embassy. That's mental. So if that reporting is true, of course he should lose his security clearance. Who says I don't want American intelligence looking into my conversations with the Kremlin? I'd rather do it at the Kremlin, at the Russian embassy. It seems like you're working for them, not for us. I mean, that is deeply concerning. And obviously something that I imagine a Democratic senator, one who's supposed to be one of the leaders of the Democrats, would be very concerned about. But instead we got this answer.
In the meantime, while there's an investigation, should Jared Kushner's security clearance be revoked or at least suspended?
Well, again, I think we need to first get to the bottom of it. He needs to answer for what was happening at the time. It raises very serious concerns for me, and that could be a potential outcome that I seek. But I want to understand, at least hear from Jared Kushner as well as the administration about what was exactly going on there.
Whoa, let's tap the brakes here. Let's be sobered. Again, I don't know, I want to hear from Jared Kushner. I thought that was curious. I was a little surprised by that. Now, I think Cory Booker is an establishment Democrat who takes a lot of donor money and largely does what they ask him to do with a progressive veneer. But Kushner, I mean, it's Trump's son-in-law. Why are you defending him? That's kind of weird. Oh, then you find out. It turns out Kushner is one of his donors. Let's go to David Sirota at the International Business Times explaining Kushner and other donors affiliated with Kushner companies delivered more than $41,000 to Booker's Senate campaign in 2013, according to data compiled by politicalmoneyline.com. Politico reported that Ivanka Trump hosted a fundraiser for Booker during that election. So when he says, I want to hear from Jared Kushner, there's a good reason for that. When he hears from Jared Kushner, sometimes it's in the form of a $41,000 check. We're not done yet though. In 2009, Jared Kushner also gave $20,000 to Booker's Newark mayoral ticket. Booker Team for Newark, New Jersey campaign finance records show. And just such a inside the beltway move as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump showed when Clinton attended Trump's wedding. That year, back in 2009, Booker attended the wedding of Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Well, if you attended their wedding and they're top donor for you, and then of course you'd want to hear them about, hey buddy Jared, what's up? You got any more checks for me? No, when I go on TV, I'll tell them, hey, let's be sobered here. So nice and easy, nice and easy. I want to hear from Jared first. This is what we're talking about when we say you work for the donors and not the voters. Now, if you cared about Democratic voters, you wouldn't do Jared Kushner any favors at all. Anyone with a modicum of sense politically would know that. But if you work for the donors, that's a different story, especially if Kushner is one of your donors. I also wanted to ask you guys a poll. Is Cory Booker a progressive? Now, to some of you, that might be super obvious. In Washington, I think it would probably be obvious the other way, but I'm curious, that's why we ask. So tytnetwork.com/Booker, and I want to see, do you guys think that he is a real progressive or just a progressive? Don't worry about real. Is Cory Booker progressive? Again, Washington, that would be a landslide, of course he is. With our audience, I don't know, it might be a landslide in another direction, but I'm curious what you guys think. You just watched the video from the Young Turks. Did you know that there's a live 2-hour show every day, and that if you're a member of the Young Turks, you can get that on demand anytime you want without ads? Plus the post game just for members, plus aggressive progressives, plus old school, plus so many other network shows. Go right now, tytnetwork.com/join.